Hey everybody. I can't speak for everybody, but I think that most people hate limits. But could it be that applying limits or restrictions to your art making makes for better art? Let's talk limits. I'm Mark, and this is We Talk Art. Before I get started, I want to thank everybody who's supporting the channel. I hit 900 subscribers. That's a huge milestone. It is really supportive and I appreciate it very much. Thank you. So there has been some research on choice, and although it is not conclusive, it may tell us something about being an artist. We assume that more options equals more freedom, equals better artwork, happiness, success. But Barry Schwartz's exploration into the paradox of choice and other researchers that have looked into choice and its negative effects show us that it might not be as true as it seems. In art, as in other things, more choice may end up being more anxiety, more regret, more second guessing, and ultimately less satisfaction with the final results. When doing art, lots of subjects, lots of tools, lots of materials can be overwhelming. Decision paralysis is real, and this is only one piece of the puzzle. Many famous artists have shown us that imposing limits on their art making have actually made for amazing art. Artists like Mondrian, with his very limited palette and his grid-like construction, was a masterclass in limits. Zorn did this with his famous four-color palette. Monet repeatedly painted the same subject, like his water lilies. Kusama, the princess of polka dots, made a career in bright colors and lots of dots. And you can't forget Andy Warhol's Campbell's soup cans. Creativity thrives within boundaries. This idea appears in creative research showing that structured constraint often produces more original outcomes than unlimited freedom. I first noticed this concept many years ago when I was working in photography with film. I, like many photographers of the time, worked with a 35mm camera, much like this. This camera has a surprising number of options and a lot of lenses to choose from. I would usually shoot film that would allow me to make 36 exposures on a roll. Later, I purchased a medium format camera. This camera was very manual. The 120 film only allowed me to take 12 exposures, and I only had one lens at the time. Despite the much better quality of the images, the whole experience was a lot more limiting. The interesting thing that I noticed is that for one roll of medium format film of 12 exposures compared to the 36 exposures I would get from the 35mm camera, I got more good images, keepers, from the medium format film, which was often as many as 5 good shots, compared to the less than 3 shots I would get from the 35mm film. This was almost 1 in 2 shots for the medium format and less than 1 in 10 shots in the 35mm. As time passed, I started realizing some of the dynamics that were playing out. Having less options, lenses, film, and such gave me more opportunity to spend my time and energy on subject matter, composing the image, and the creative process. With new digital cameras and zoom lenses, it can often lead to that decision paralysis I mentioned earlier. For each shot, I wondered, should I shoot it wide, telephoto, black and white, narrow depth of field, slow shutter speed, fast shutter speed, bracket, HDR? It's endless. It honestly takes what I learned from the medium format film camera to apply limits to make any good work. The Hicks law shows that decision time increases logarithmically with the number of choices. More choices slows down decisions more, and it's not just linear. Applying some limits on your process will allow you to think more about the image you are trying to create and less about which options are the best to do it. Less options lets you dial in the fewer options you give yourself so that you can get down to the actual making of the art. Often what I do to compensate is to limit my options intentionally. This might be limiting the color palette, using one or a few tools, or sticking to one technique. I found that embracing what I learned from my medium format camera allowed me to limit my options, thoroughly learn those options, tools, and materials I kept, which allowed me to concentrate on making art that expressed my vision. I feel like most of us mentally grant ourselves some amount of time to do a task. I tend to be a little bit ADHD, so If all the options feel too overwhelming, I will start to rush. I will pick from the options without really knowing if I picked the best, leading to a lot of mediocre choices. So instead of trying to deal with everything, which can actually take longer, if I limit my options so that each step is manageable, I make the decision, execute it, and move on to the next, the process feels a lot less overwhelming and it becomes more familiar with my limited process. I then have more confidence that I made good decisions and it leaves me more time and bandwidth to do the artistic part of making my art. In later years, as I approached other kinds of art more frequently, I kept finding other situations where embracing limits, or even forcing limits, actually ended up improving my art, such as limited color palette. I have somewhat limited color vision. Technically, I'm considered colorblind, yet I don't think that that is a good description of what I deal with. Regardless, the result of that is that I always shied away from mixing colors. This further resulted in me often buying lots of colors, whatever medium I was working in, feeling that picking the right color was much easier than mixing the right color. But what I found was actually quite different. Recently, I did a small watercolor series where I used only 4 colors. What I found was the 4 colors, even though they were a bit odd, eliminated the too many option paralysis that I would find myself in with larger palettes of color. Is that Cascade Green, Leaf Green, Phthalo Green? Ugh. I found when I only had a few colors, you just go with what you know and have. Blue and yellow makes green. A little bit of red pulls down the saturation. Boom, paint. After this series, I've been more and more pulling out smaller palettes of color and working with those. It is actually easier and I'm getting better results. I know from talking to a lot of artists, the apprehension to color mixing is real. But if this colorblind guy could do it, I guarantee you can do this. This is further reinforced by the fact that the color you see in the world are never the same as the ones that come out of the tubes, no matter how many colors you have. Get away from thinking that you will get the color you need right out of the tube, pencil, or pan, and practice color mixing. It will make you a better artist right off the bat. Limited size and limited aspect ratio. At various times in my life, I have limited the size of the work I do. This might be because I am traveling, or I'm working in a sketchbook, or I'm making work for a miniature show. If you can remove options as a decision point from your process when doing a series of art, it does 2 great things. First, it makes one less decision, which is actually bigger than you might think. It also allows you to, over time, visualize the final work at that size, in effect eliminating many more options. How much fits into the space? How much detail can I include? And even what mediums or tools you might use. This is also true of using a single aspect ratio for a series of work, even if you work in different sizes. Repeatedly using an aspect ratio will allow you to learn the way to compose for that aspect ratio. The more you do this, the better you will become, working with a combined set of tools or mediums. Most artists I know, including myself, work in many mediums. I draw, I use pen and ink, I paint in different mediums, I do printmaking, and a bunch of other things too. You get it. If you don't completely limit yourself to a single medium and a set of tools, which is actually kind of a good idea, you may consider at least doing it for a while or for some amount of time. The first time I did the Inktober challenge, which is an annual art challenge started by Jake Parker to draw 31 drawings in ink, one for every day of the month of October, from a list of prompts that changes every year. I was shocked by how much it helped my art making. Despite the fact that I had worked in pen and ink before and the fact that I really didn't achieve it in the 31 days that I was trying for, I was amazed at how much it improved not only my pen and ink skills, but it improved my overall drawing skills and my painting skills. The process of the challenge, which was very limiting, taught me a great deal about the medium of pen and ink, eliminated a lot of fears I had about working in pen and ink, and allowed me to grow other skills. This challenge limited the subject to the prompts. Because I worked in a dedicated sketchbook, it limited my size, and to a lesser extent my aspect ratios. It limited the medium to ink and the tools, and should have limited my time to the 31 days if I had done that. This brings up another limit, time. I've seen in comments in different places that people sometimes are confused about the value of time limits in their art making. I am most definitely a believer that you should give final art the time it needs to be completed. A whole video could be probably done on that. But the other side of that is when you're doing practice or doing studies or sketches, a time constraint can be very helpful. If you've ever done a life drawing session, you'll know the session is broken up into time poses. This can help teach you several important skills. Don't get caught up in the detail. Identify what is important about the pose or the subject. Establish the overall form of your subject in this space. How to figure out size relationships, foreshortening and such. Just to name a few. The time restriction will force you to improve your skills on those preliminary things, which will allow you to concentrate onto bigger parts of making your art when you're doing final projects. Working in series. I just made a whole video on this right up here, but limiting yourself to working in a series can be a great way to improve your overall practice. Instead of painting one painting, paint 10 on the same subject, place, or theme. This will allow you to better understand your chosen point of the series, and that understanding will result in better work. This idea of limits can go on, and I am sure you can come up with some of your own. Another point about these limits, as I alluded to in the Inktober part, is that limits can teach you things. Work with one or a small set of tools, such as brushes, colors, pencils, or pens, will make you better with those tools. Do a group of paintings with a style borrowed from an old master will teach you other ways to approach problems. Paint your morning coffee or tea for a week. This will teach you to expand your style. Pick 2, 3, or 4 colors and work with them for a month. You will learn those colors and more about color mixing and color theory. Find an art challenge that excites you, 100 Hands Challenge, Paint in a Week Challenge, or one of many other challenges like the Inktober Challenge. Or make up your own challenge for yourself. And hey, wrangle in some of your friends into it. Almost any challenge has lessons. Every artist is different, as I often say. You must figure out if limits work for you and to what degree. Some artists work amazingly well with lots of limits on every part of their process. Others seem to work in complete chaos with endless possibilities. One is not better than the other, it's just different strokes for different artists. These limits and restrictions can be for one piece, one series, for a length of time that makes sense, until you reach some goal, or for a career, as I've pointed out some artists who have done that. I find that many professional artists have their process, which is a set of limits through their choices of materials, tools, and techniques that allow them to do their work consistently to the standards of quality they expect. I would also say that if you work within a medium, there is just limits based on the natural restrictions of that medium. Most mediums have limits to the detail that can be achieved, colors that can be created, contrast that is possible, and many other limits depending on the medium. But you as the artist will pick your materials or tools to expand or limit those options. Perhaps this video will encourage you to consider limiting rather than expanding those options. Regardless, embrace the limits of your medium will make you a better artist. The artists who intentionally limit themselves aren't restricting their creativity, they're protecting it from being overwhelmed. I have only touched on a few of the opportunities here. You will undoubtedly think of more that are more personal or relevant to you. Experiment with limits. Try different ones. What works, what doesn't. Let us know in the comments below what your experience on this is. If you like this video, consider giving us a like. If you want to see more of our videos, subscribe. It's a free way to get our videos in your feed. I will put 2 more videos up here if you want to click on those. Otherwise, go make some art.